So I've been a pretty big fan of David Bowie for my entire life, since I was in diapers. I didn't know that he was a singer until I was 12, though. When I say I was a fan of David Bowie, I meant I was a fan of him in the movie The Labyrinth. When I found out that he was a singer, I was shocked. How come nobody told me this? I started researching, and I spent hours just listening to his music and watching his music videos. Something that always really stood out to me, and to a lot of people, was how he wasn't just David Bowie, and each album he released was like a concept album, and he would create characters with them. So after listening to my speech today, you guys should be able to list 4 of these personas. So the first one I'm going to start out with is Ziggy Stardust, which is probably the most well-known of the 4 I'm going to list. It was first introduced in 1972, and the concept album was The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Ziggy was very eccentric. It was basically like a manufactured superstar at the time. He was based off of the British singer Vince Taylor, who had become a drug addict, lost his mind, so to speak, joined a cult, and proclaimed that he was in fact an alien god. With that information, I can tell you that Ziggy Stardust, in David Bowie's own words, was an omnisexual alien rock star. Out of all of his personas, Ziggy wasn't the one that lasted the longest because people didn't really understand the difference between David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. They didn't understand it was a character, and David Bowie didn't really like that. So he killed him off in like 3 years, saying that he died a real rock and roll suicide. So the second persona I'm going to talk about is the Thin White Duke, who was around from 1975 to 1976. Compared to Ziggy Stardust, this was a very plain persona. He wore plain clothes and had plain hair. He was an aristocat, and his concept album was Station to Stations. He was based off of a character that David Bowie had played previously in the movie The Man Who Fell to Earth. The thing that really started like a ruckus with this person, or with this character, is that he was a fascist, which back then wasn't cool and now isn't cool. So a lot of people, again, it was the same thing as Ziggy Stardust, didn't understand that these was a character and it wasn't David Bowie's views. But David Bowie had said about this character that he was a very Aryan, fascist type, a would-be romantic with no emotions at all. This kind of connects to David Bowie's personal life because during this time he was really into drugs, and he claims he doesn't even remember writing the Stations to Stations album. So in review, so far we've talked about Ziggy Stardust, who was an alien rock star, and the Thin White Duke, who was a fascist aristocat. So the next person I'm going to talk about is also a very well-known of these characters, which is Major Tom. He originally showed up in 1969, but the reason I'm listing him third is because unlike Ziggy and the Duke, he had a very long lifespan. He was an astronaut that had been sent to space. Eventually, there's something wrong with the spaceship, and he gets lost, kind of accepting his own doom. It's a very ominous song. If you've ever listened to Space Oddity, it's about Major Tom. So as I was saying, he was a very long character. The last time that he's referenced is in the album Black Star, which was actually released 3 days before David Bowie's death. It's not outright said that it's Major Tom, but the music video shows an astronaut skull, like in the little helmet, being taken away by an alien girl, so it's pretty implied. The last one I'm going to talk about is actually a character from a movie, the one I talked about at the beginning, which is Labyrinth. David Bowie played the character the Goblin King. This movie came out in 1986, and it was about a teenager who was trying to save her brother back from a Goblin King, which was David Bowie. This wasn't the same as the other 3 because it wasn't a character that he created. It was created by George Lucas and Jim Henson, the guy who made Dark Crystal. But he really took this character to heart because people recognized him in the streets. Like, little kids would come up to him and be like, "Oh, you're the guy from the Muppet movie," rather than coming up to him saying like, "Oh, you're David Bowie, oh, you're Ziggy Stardust," which was kind of like the thing he didn't want to be, was Ziggy Stardust. So in review, we talked about Ziggy Stardust, the alien, Major Tom, the astronaut, the Goblin King from the Labyrinth movie, and the White Duke. Today I'm going to leave you guys with one of the most well-known David Bowie quotes, which is, "Tomorrow belongs to those who hear it coming." Thank you.